So Chris, let's get started. Going back to the beginning, the why. Can you share briefly why, what prompted you and Dr. Wilder to create this in the first place, and what problems you were trying to address in the creation?
Yeah, it's really a fascinating story, Christy, on many levels. I had encountered Jim Wilder in the 90s. I was a pastoral counselor working with severe trauma, and Jim Wilder was just one of those names that came with a lot of respect because Jim was an author, but he was teaching, he was a speaker in a lot of conferences. Jim was one of the speakers talking about how God designed our brain. And so the life model, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, kind of the introductory book, was released in the 90s. People were starting to read this book. I read this book and it just explained my life. It explained those that I served. It explained my church. And the ministry that I was working with had moved up to northern Michigan, and we were trying to apply the living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, that life model lens. We were trying to use that in this redemptive community setting, working with severe trauma. And Jim had, he knew my colleagues, and he came out to visit several times over the years. And in those early days, I had a chance to start working with Jim closely. And one of the first big assignments is Jim had it in his mind to create training, to do something that had never been done before, which is design some training where people could learn to practice and grow relational skills. That brain science said, brain science knew basically that these skills could be learned and introduced the first 3 years of life, and then throughout the lifetime, we would, fine tune and fashion those skills. But no one had really tested to see if an adult later in life, outside of that first 3 years sweet spot, could learn these skills. So Jim wanted to test that. And I was part of this redemptive community. I was pastor of a small congregation. So I had people, willing participants, highly motivated to learn skills and build some joy. So Jim came up with this design and these exercises that I would then practice and give feedback. And out of that came the desire to see if we could take 6 days at the time. It's no longer 6 days, it's 5 days, but back then it was 6 days. And create this training that people could learn and practice relational skills. And so the big test was, can people learn these skills later in life, right? And so can you introduce these skills through specific exercises that are practiced through a set amount of time that then people could build on? So that was one big problem that we set out to solve. The other was working with people in healing who had a lot of needs. Could we also help people in their healing process learn to give life outside of themselves? So kind of the secondary goal for Thrive is, could we actually include some of these precious people that I knew that were part of my test group for Thrive? Could we have them also participate in this training and be able to basically train other people in the life model? We had no idea how that would go, but they were learning to give life outside of themselves. And so we found success on both fronts, that both people were learning new skills and those who were kind of entrenched in their own healing journeys were learning they had a lot to offer. And what would actually help their maturity and their healing was also to give life outside of themselves. So Christy, it was kind of a double blessing in a sense, that it worked on both fronts. And that was 20 years ago. So we've learned a lot over the years, and just really helping people how to grow these skills in their lives and their relationships.
That's really cool. I love that it started out sort of as that experiment. And spoiler alert, yes, we can learn these skills later in life, as you guys have seen through these trainings. So I just think it's really cool that we have this opportunity to actually rewire our brains to learn the skills that we missed, and to do it in community where we can give and receive life, which is amazing. So as you mentioned, we are 20 years later. I was hoping you could share, if you've seen people go through it, you've seen this transformation happen. What are some of the top pieces of feedback you get from people as far as the changes that they're seeing, the things that are happening to them through being in part of this training? Just share why it's so valuable.
You know, it's kind of fun in those early days. People came to the training just because they knew Jim Wilder and they respected Jim. They're like, I don't know what this Northern Michigan conference or training is all about, but if Jim's a part of it, I'll go because this, you know, he's a brilliant guy. So as soon as people start practicing and building joy, I would hear people say, wow, if I would have known it was going to be like this, I would have brought my family with me. I would have brought my church people with me. Like I would have brought more people. And versions of that have been pretty consistent over the years. Like people coming into Thrive, they haven't been there before. They've done some of the prep. So they're not quite clear on what they're getting into. And when they start practicing, it's kind of like they have these light bulb moments and they go, oh, wow, I didn't know it was going to be like this. I would have brought, you know, I have some friends that really would have benefited from this, or my children, or my, you know, family members. So a lot of people just realize they start thinking of other people that would benefit from learning these skills or growing these skills in their lives. I've heard one of my favorites, the feedback I get from people is people for the first time actually feel like they've connected with Jesus. Like people for the first time just feel like they've heard from Jesus, they've sensed God's peace and God's joy, and that like they tie that to their salvation. Like, wow, I finally feel like I'm excited, like I've experienced God. I'm not just white knuckling it anymore. I've been able to encounter God's peace or God's presence and joy in some way. So that's you know, part of the skills we're teaching. So I never get tired of that one, that people just feel like for the first time they've had some of that joy with God. A lot of people feel like it's a missing piece in their walk with Christ. Like many have been around Christian circles for a long time, and they've done so many things, and they realize there's something missing and they're not quite sure what it is. But when they start learning relational skills, they go, oh, wow, this is what I've needed. So I hear a lot of those kind of aha moments, like, oh, this explains why I was struggling in these areas, but now I have hope. So they feel like they have a new language. They feel like they found something that's missing. There's a new path here. There's a new way of living and walking with the Lord, and really growing maturity in our communities. So a lot of these light bulb moments for people, and you see the joy on their faces when they share this with you. So it's I think one of my favorite things about the training is just hearing how it impacts people in, you know, in different ways, and where they need some of that.
Very cool. Thank you, Chris. Michael, I'd love to hear from you, especially because you've gone through the training. You're now a trainer, but you also have all this history with spiritual formation and this heart for seeing people experience true transformation. So can you share some of the value you see in this training as from all those perspectives?
You know, I really, you know, first of all, believe in this training because my wife and I did it, and we've experienced ourselves and seen the results in our own lives. And so, you know, having more emotional resilience, or more of an interactive relationship with Jesus. And there's almost like a different kind of relational fabric that's present in my life, that an awareness that wasn't there before. And it's really like a global thing. It affects all of life. It's not just a few skills I use here or there. So that's, first of all, why I'm really sold out on this and think it's important, and highly, highly recommend it. You know, the skills we learn in Thrive, they're really what's been missing in discipleship, you know, in the church, in much of the world, especially in our country, for a long time. And this is what we learned. So we're focusing on what's missing, that you don't usually consider even part of discipleship. And the church has done a pretty good job in general of teaching the Bible and things like that. But where we're lacking in teaching is actually teaching and training people how to love. And so we'll often teach people how, that we're supposed to love, but we don't teach them how. How do you actually pull that off? And Thrive is really focused on that issue. It all aims towards us loving like Jesus loves, living in the love that Jesus modeled for us. You know, because really not a week goes by where we read an article about a pastor essentially blowing up his life or family or ministry, or a Christian leader or someone essentially not acting like a Christian. And, we can look at that and realize, they were probably never trained to love like Jesus loved. which involves a lot of the skills you were learning the 5 days at your Thrive training. And if they're missing, you just kind of have a wobbly foundation on your emotional and relational house. And if they'd had that training, we probably wouldn't be reading these articles about, ministries blowing up and things going. And so we really see, it's filling the void that's necessary. It's the void when I was a pastor that I saw it and didn't know how to fill. And so I'm just, I'm all in for Thrive and happy you're doing it.
Well, we're thrilled to have you and Claudia be a part of it with us. I mean, it's really a joy to have you. And yeah, I mean, that's really powerful, right? Because it's one thing to tell someone, do something, love, be patient, lay your life down. But these skills, like you said, they actually help people develop the ability to do these things.
Yep.
So that's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about, we have different Thrive resources. We have online events, sometimes online courses, different things. This is, which I should have said in the introduction, but this is a 5-day live in-person event. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the what's behind it. But Chris, can you address why this is different from other resources that we offer? Why would they want to attend this versus just taking part of some of our online opportunities?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So my friend Jim Martini used to say that Thrive was a joy boot camp, or that was his way of putting it, because it's like you're participating in something, it's intense, and you're practicing, and it's all about joy. So that image worked well. Yeah, really it comes down to a couple thoughts. So one is just there's a need to learn new skills, what we call skill acquisition. So you have to learn new skills that I have nothing on record. I have nothing on file. I need you to demonstrate it, and I need to practice what I see, and I need to practice with other people, and I just need to do it over and over and over again. So that's one of the big things Jim and I had in mind in those early days of Thrive, is just, can we help people acquire these new skills that they don't have? It's like trying to learn a new language. I need to hear how it sounds. I need to try to get the accent right. And then I need to practice, but I need someone who knows how to speak the language to help me. So we need that for relational skills. So sometimes I have nothing on file. You got to help me learn how to do this. But then we need to strengthen existing skills. And so I might be able to do things a little bit relationally, but I just need some practice, and I need some help, and I need some coaching. And so the nice thing about just like going to a Thrive training is you're going into protected time where you're going to learn and acquire new skills, but you're also going to strengthen skills. And like we always say at Thrive, every minute of the training is planned. It's not like, let's just plan every minute to overwhelm you, but it's planned purposely for joy and rest. So you strengthen those skills and you grow new skills. And as the tracks kind of increase, you're introduced to more new skills, because these are the harder skills. So we kind of need both. But the nice thing about doing this for 5 days is you're enjoying the beauty of repetition. And so you're practicing. I grew up playing a lot of sports. I used to play racquetball. And when you're playing racquetball, you've got to get really good at the weaknesses in your game. So like the backhand shot was really hard. So I would just go and I would practice over and over and over again. And I would play people who were better than me, who had a better game, and I would learn and I would improve, but I would just keep doing the same thing over and over again until I could do it more reflexively as a habit. So, strengthening skills that you might have a little bit, and then growing new skills that you have nothing on file, but then we're going to practice and rehearse those practices over and over again. That in my mind is really some of the reasons Thrive is really helpful for people. Just go and have this protected time to practice.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. How about you, Michael?
I would add to that too, and I agree with what Chris said, but also the sense of there's a real deep sense of corporate joy during those 5 days, because you're going, you're repeating things, you're going into areas of your life, you're seeing each other, you're sharing with each other. And really a deep bond is formed between the people who have spent those 5 days working hard on their souls, building joy together. And there's almost like a tangible, almost visceral joy in the room. you can almost feel it in the air when you come together. And that's why I think deep connections are formed. My sister and her husband went through Thrive the year before COVID started. And so they weren't able to continue with track 2. They haven't done it yet because, basically we didn't do Thrive for a while. But they were in a momentum group. You are encouraged to join a momentum group after you do Thrive, and you do exercises then the entire year following before your next track. And this is now 3 years later, they're still meeting online with that group. They're scattered all over the United States. And they're almost like becoming family, so it's not just a training to get some skills. It is that, but it's also there, you'll build family, people you'll probably know the rest of your life and share life with. And we know when we're dealing with these kinds of family level relationships, our brain goes into really important areas that form us, that are you almost need those kinds of bonds in order to do certain kind of growth in your life, in character formation. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of corporate joy in the room. So if that sounds attractive to you, I can assure you'll enjoy that part of it as well.
Yeah, that's so true. And even I had a friend who went through it recently, and she was really struggling at the beginning of the week. And by the end of the week, I mean, she was just radiating with joy. You could tell she just felt so connected to the people that she was with. It was really cool. A last point that I want to hit on too, Chris, you already hit on that through talking about the repetition, but that is the point of like building momentum. And if you're looking to really make some headway, get a jump start to get a real drive down the field with some of these skills that we teach and train on, this is a great way to do it. And I just want to read a quote from one of my friends who went through track 1 last summer. And he said, as a former athlete, I can relate my Thrive training experience to similar experiences. Sports camp, that 1 week per summer of intense focus on fundamentals under the supervision of experienced coaches and mentors did wonders for my football abilities. Even though I practiced for a couple of hours during the seasons, per day during the seasons, and studied and trained during off seasons, those camp weeks being filled with constant focused training in the fundamentals of running and tackling were an essential piece of optimal development. I have come to believe the same of Thrive training. The week-long right brain training and coaching at Thrive took my joy and rest skills to the next level. So it was definitely transformational for him. And I think for just about everybody that comes through it, it just really kind of gives you a jump start, builds some momentum, which is pretty cool.